Hello and welcome to Right from the Kickoff. I'll be your host for today, Will, and as always, we're joined by Joe. How are you doing, Joe?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. Really looking forward to this week. Obviously, we've been away for a while, which we'll talk about in a sec. But no, it's great to be back, and there's some great games to talk about this week, isn't there? Obviously, last weekend's Premier League was action packed, so I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and obviously some massive results as well. But we just want to start with an apology rather, because last week we did record a podcast, but it just didn't upload. There was just some issues with the video. We were just talking about the England squad really, which we will re-record when it closer when we get to the Euros, just because we picked our teams as you might have seen on our social media account. So yeah, so without further ado, let's get started, Joe.
Yeah, let's get started, mate. Let's do it. So yeah, let's go. Let's go.
So let's start with the first match, and arguably one of the best matches of the weekend, and the biggest shock of the weekend, which was Chelsea West Brom, where Chelsea lost 5-2 to relegation-stricken West Brom. Chelsea actually took the lead in this match, but the tides turned when Thiago Silva got sent off in the 29th minute. What did you make of it, Jay?
Well, I just think that, like you say, the the tides turned, didn't they? When they got sent off, obviously Chelsea took the lead through Pulisic. I think obviously free kick, and then he knocked in the rebound. But you often think, especially when you look at Chelsea, obviously the talent, they've got an abundance of talent, and obviously Tuchel, they're not conceded in something ridiculous over 200 odd, kind of passages of play or whatever. They're really not conceded a lot of goals coming into this game. Thiago Silva, for me, his inclusion was a bit of an odd one, because obviously he'd not been away on international break, he'd not kept the fitness and stuff. And thing is, you can't. And a lot of the pundits said this weekend, and it was kind of. I think Tuchel learned a lesson. And it doesn't matter who you're playing in the Premier League. Every team's got players of talent. You're in the Premier League. Do you know what I mean? West Brom have got players like, Pereira, for example, who shone for them. Obviously Robertson as well. These players are handy players when given the chances and get the opportunities. So I think Chelsea messed up on this one. Having said that, obviously the second yellow, I just think he was stupid. You're already on a yellow,
Yeah.
and he gets.
Why would you give the referee an option to send you off? It's just stupid. So
Yeah,
early on in the match as well.
Yeah, I think to be honest, there was a couple of Chelsea fans after the game. I was obviously flicking through social media, and they were saying, "Well, I'm not really sure it was a second yellow," but like you just said, and like I would say to those Chelsea fans, whether or not you're convinced it was a second yellow, it's that whole thing of don't make the challenge that early on after getting booked. Do you know what I mean? You've got to just let it go. You've got to keep in the vicinity of the player, but don't make any rash challenges. And unfortunately, Thiago, experienced defender, very high level, Champions League level. We're not talking about a kid here either, are we? He's a very experienced defender. So, bit of a mishap on him. And then after that, West Brom just blew me away, to be honest, because yes, they were facing 10 men, but some of the football. And let's not forget, before Chelsea went down to 10 men, yes, they went 1-0 up, but they weren't dominating. West Brom was still playing some lovely football. They were up for the fight. Do you know what I mean? And obviously the extra man just helped them with that. And they really capitalised. If you saw some of the goals, the goal for Diagne beautifully worked. The goal for Robinson beautifully worked. Both his goals beautifully worked. Obviously, second goal chipped over the keeper. Absolute brilliant game to watch. And if you're a West Brom fan, obviously you'd be absolutely delighted. But you're sitting there going, well, where's this been all season? Because they played some lovely stuff, didn't they, Will?
Yeah, they did, and I think it did help them having a bit more space. But some of the football, like you say, was unbelievable. The way they passed the ball, particularly for Robinson's goals as well. I was just so impressed with West Brom, and I've got a big question for you now. Do you think they've still got a chance? Because they're only 7 points adrift now, which is manageable. We've seen teams do it before. Remember the Leicester Great Escape, We all know what
I
happened there,
think
but it's not too late, is it, though?
yeah, Leicester's great escape. They're on 19 points going into the last sort of 8 or 9 games. West Brom were on 18, so if West Brom do manage to do it, it will be the greatest escape the Premier League's ever seen. It's doable. I just think that there is a lot of pressure on the games, and they've got some big teams coming up as well. But you'd have put Chelsea down as a loss. Let's be honest. So it is doable. I'm still thinking they'll go down. I think they will. I think they'll get some good results on the way. I don't think they're done fighting for sure. But I think they will go down just because I think it's a little bit too much for them to do. But I'm happy to be proved wrong. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying they're out of it. I think they've still got points to fight for. So who knows? Who knows? I'm not sitting on the fence. I think they will go down. But I'm like I say, I've been wrong before. So who knows? And with the way they played against Chelsea, yes, they were down to 10 men, Chelsea were, but let's be honest, you've got to make it count, and West Brom very, very much did that, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy for them, but the next games going to be at the end of the season are Southampton, Leicester, Aston Villa, Wolves, Arsenal, Liverpool, West Ham and Leeds. So if they were to do it, they need some big results because they're playing some really tough teams in that lot, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, especially, and you look at a lot of those teams. You look at like the likes of Leicester and Liverpool. Still got a lot to fight for themselves at the other end of the table. So it's not going to be easy for them either. It's not like Liverpool have won the Premier League or Leicester have already got their Champions League spot. It's both of those teams will want to win that game as well. So both teams respectively got to fight for the game for different reasons. But I don't think West Brom's going to be an easy game now for either of Liverpool or Leicester, to be honest. I think it is going to be and we've seen the way they can play. So it just depends if they turn up. And whether you can kind of stifle their attack. But they've got some decent players. I was very shocked at this result, but it does give you a bit of hope if you're a West Brom fan. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
but
it can happen.
Just going on to Chelsea, though, I thought it was very disappointing. I thought, there are ways to play when you're down to 10 men. You can say, oh, they were down to 10 men and stuff. But I've seen teams with 10 men before become very, very hard to beat. And sometimes a lot of teams make it harder to beat them. They hold out for a draw or even get a win at times. So very disappointed for Chelsea. And with the talent they had on the field, they really shouldn't have capitulated like they did.
Yeah,
sure.
It's almost like they were preparing for the Champions League tie we saw last night, which they did win, credit to them, and it was a completely different outfit. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how their top 4 hopes go because it's very, very tight in that pack at the moment, which we'll come on to shortly, won't we?
I mean, I've got to be completely honest with you as well. If they do come up short in the Prem, I don't see them winning the Champions League. They've got a relatively easy tie. No disrespect to Porto, but they've got a relatively easy tie in terms of the teams left in the competition.
Yeah, some really tough games
with Porto. Porto are a good side. Don't get me wrong; they've gotten to the quarterfinals. They are there on merit. But do you know what I mean? In terms of the teams left in the competition, I'm sure that most teams would have wanted Porto.
Yeah.
So I think they'll. With the semi-final, you've either got Paris Saint-Germain or Bayern Munich. Both teams are super teams, aren't they, in the respective leagues? And then you've got, obviously, Liverpool are still in it, Real Madrid are still in it, Man City are still in it, even Borussia Dortmund. So any of those teams to go through, it's going to be very difficult for Chelsea. But you never know, they're in the competition anyway. But, I just thought they threw the Premier League game away a little bit against West Brom, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So let's move on. Joe, which game did you want to pick out next?
For me, it has to be the Monday night game. I mean, I was expecting to go on to Leicester Man City next, obviously with me being a Leicester fan. But for me, the Monday night game in West Ham Wolves, I did get a bit worried for West Ham in this one, obviously considering what they did at Arsenal. They went 3-0 up and you thought, oh, the game's done and dusted. Wolves slowly clawed themselves back into it, though, didn't they? But there was some great individual performances for West Ham. Jesse Lingard again.
Oh, what a goal!
What a goal! I mean, if I'm the manager, though, you know that Lingard's now one of their biggest threats. You've got to get closer to him. Wolves just weren't at it. Wolves have their own problems, but I mean, I know. But I just think that West Ham are really pushing, and people keep expecting them to drop away, but they keep going, and they capitalise on the fact that Chelsea had that loss, and they're now back in the top four. Honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that Leicester were kind of vying for the same positions as West Ham, I do want them to do it. Do you know what I mean? If Leicester and West Ham can be in there at the end of the season, I'd absolutely love that, because I just think David Moyes has done a fantastic job. Everybody knows what they're doing, and let's not forget this is the same game. Yeah, they beat Wolves, who are a handy side themselves. This is the same game that they found out the news that obviously Dylan Rice, one of the key players, is going to be out for 4 weeks with a knee injury, so he didn't play against Wolves, and they still managed to get the result. So
yeah, they really stepped up.
Yeah, so I think it's just interesting, because you sit there sometimes, don't you, and you go, oh, they've got key players. If they lose their key players, if they lose a player like Dylan Rice, they're going to fall away. But again, they go on and they win the game, and it's going to be a real, I mean, we'll talk about it later, but it's going to be a real battle at the London Stadium, against Leicester at the weekend. I think.
Oh, massive game coming up.
That's a massive game for both clubs. So, but we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it's a brilliant win for West Ham, capitalised, and they're really not dropping away now. 4 points behind Leicester in third. So, I think it was a great win for them for sure. Have you got any comments on Wolves?
I thought they first half was just inexplicable. I don't think they played very well at all. But the second half, they had a few chances to tie the game, didn't they? I think we were quite unlucky in the end, which you would have thought at half time not to come away with a draw, wouldn't you? So, but I think you have to say fair play to West Ham for the win. I think they deserved it over the course of the match. And I've got a question for you now, Joe. Going back to Lingard, we're speaking about him, and he's a hot topic of conversation at the moment, especially when he has the freedom as he does at West Ham. Do you think he's got a chance at the Euros to make it in the England squad?
He's got to. You can't not put him in.
So?
You can't not put him in. I'm sorry. I mean, you're looking at his stats. He's actually scored the same amount of goals, and this is a shocking stat because I was looking at some of the stats this morning before, obviously, we've come on to the podcast. And he's actually scored the same amount of goals this season as Jack Grealish.
Yeah.
So, and obviously he's not played for most of the season until he joined West Ham. So I just think it's very impressive. And do you know what? I think he's not only proving a lot of people wrong here, including myself included. I've never really been a fan of his, to be honest, and I've always said that, but I'll give credit where it's due for sure. He's not only proved a lot of people wrong, but I think he's proving something to himself. And I think a lot of clubs now are kind of sitting there with the form that he's shown for West Ham and going, oh, why didn't we go for him? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's, especially with the fact that I think he is going to move away from United. I think United have kind of moved on from him now, and they'll want to get rid of him. So it's whether he goes to West Ham or whether some other club's going for him. But the right move for me at the end of the season wouldn't go back to West Ham. Surely permanent move for West Ham and him, it would be a perfect scenario.
Yeah, I think it would just be the best fit for Lingard as well, because he has that freedom where he hasn't had before, and I think he should definitely be West Ham's top man next season as well. I think that'd be number one priority list for them.
Yeah, and I think I just want to say one more thing. I know I've mentioned it before on this show, but I think the fact that he's managed to keep his fitness levels up as much as he has been absolutely phenomenal. We know he wasn't playing a lot at United, barely getting a game. So the fact that he's managed to keep himself in the nick that he has, especially over lockdown and stuff, I've seen a lot of players kind of that aren't in the squads or in the rotation, not letting themselves go, but, need time to get themselves back up to match fitness. But it seemed to me when he joined West Ham, he was ready to go. He was there. He was already at match fitness, which is incredible, really.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I just want to give a shout out for his assist because he did a little Berbatov turn for the assist as well. I don't know if you saw it. It was unbelievable skill, wasn't it?
I mean, he's definitely one. And like I say, a lot of people are going, Southgate will probably take Lingard knowing him and stuff. But I think he's done enough to deserve it. I really do. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, how much I love Grealish, and Grealish does a lot for Aston Villa. We know this, but it doesn't hurt to have options.
Yeah, and there's a lot of options at that.
There's a lot of options, but you look at when he played for England. I know it was against San Marino, and I know he played a couple of odd minutes and stuff, but he looked a threat. When he got the ball, he always looks a threat, and that's something that I've not really seen him do before. I'd never really think, okay, right, what's he going to do with the ball now? I always think, he's just going to pass it sideways and stuff. But he looks to be running direct. Perfect for me, and I think he should get into the squad for sure.
Yeah, and he's such a good young player, isn't he, Joe?
Yeah, he's a very young player, as we know. I mean, it's a bit of a running joke now. I think he's 28 now, isn't he? He seems to be around the game for forever. A lot of the pundits don't seem to know his age. I remember when Roy Keane was like, he's a young lad, I get used to it. And that was when he was 26. So, do you know what I mean? At least I think the way he acts and the way he is, he's a very childlike, isn't he? The way, I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean the fact that I think the way the world perceives him is kind of lacking a little bit in maturity. But I think that's just who he is as a player. He likes to have fun and stuff. I think that's where the joke comes from for sure.
Yeah, anyway, that's enough about Lingard and West Ham. So let's move on to the second match of the last weekend's games, which was Leeds Sheffield United. Now, Leeds won this 1-2-1, and what did you think of it, Joe?
Relatively poor game, to be honest. There wasn't a lot happening. Leeds fully deserved the win, but let's be honest, they're playing Sheffield United. I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. It's just, Sheffield United you'd expect Leeds to win this one. You'd expect anybody who plays Sheffield United now to win the game. Sheffield United, they played a bit tight at the back, but I just don't, I'm not excited when watching them anymore. Do you know what I mean? They're kind of, their heads are down. You saw the only surprising thing, it was only 2-1, really.
Yeah. Would you say that Leeds were a bit lucky in sense of for their second goal, which was a Jagielka own goal?
Yeah, they were lucky. They were lucky, but you say that sometimes. Kind of football, the way I like to look at it, especially being a massive football fan of my club and stuff, you make your own luck. Ball goes in there, and what happens next? It happens, but the ball's been put in there, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're up that end of the pitch. Anything can happen. If you're attacking and you put a ball in and it goes in via an own goal. Do you know what I mean? You've made your own luck because you've got yourself to that position on the pitch. So even though it is unlucky from Jagielka's point of view, it happens, mate, doesn't it? It happens, and you've got to. If you're a fan of Sheffield United or Leeds, you've just kind of got to accept it when it does happen.
And I think in some ways it's a bit of a null and void game because Leeds are just mid-table. I don't think they're really fighting for. Well, they can't really be fighting for a top four. I think it's just out of reach, and Sheffield United are doomed, as we know. So a bit of a null and void game. I think
this was really the only game of the weekend that didn't really pique my interest. I mean, I watched most of it, but it was kind of like, well, there's nothing really on the line here for either team. So it was a bit of a dull affair in that sense. Do you know what I mean? Kind of 100%. Didn't really mean much, and you'd have expected Leeds to win, and they'll look at that and go, well, that's another 3 points in the bank, and we're safe now and everything, like we say. So, and I think, like I say, if I'm a Leeds fan, that's all I wanted at the start of the season, if I'm going to be completely honest. So
yeah, just be safe, just be realistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a bit of a short one, but we'll move on to the next game. Leicester Man City. Now, Man City won 2-0, but do you reckon it could have been more?
Yeah, I do. I think obviously 2-0 was a fair result. To be honest, I think the way that sort of Brendan Rodgers set up for Leicester, it was very defensive. I think I've heard a lot of Leicester fans talk about it being a very negative performance. We've got to turn up in these games, but it's not always about turning up. I think the players who were in the game and stuff, you've got to remember you're playing Man City. These are world class players, and I mean at any level. So it was a bit of a notch up for Leicester, and I said this at the start of the week. I think I said it to you, Wood, and I said if we could have got anything out of that game, it would have been a terrific bonus. So as much as it was hard to take the loss, and it was one that I was expecting for sure, just because of Man City's kind of performances and their run of form. So I wasn't particularly shocked at the result, and I think Man City played it perfectly to a T. I have to make a comment though, and this is me wearing my Leicester glasses. I thought De Bruyne was a little bit petulant, diving around a little bit. Everybody has those players in their team though. Leicester have them themselves. So, but I just wanted to point that out. I think it's not something that I like to see in his game, because he had no need to do it. He's got the talent there for sure, and obviously they went and won the game, but there was a couple of times where he was diving around. I think the referee did give a free kick which he hit the bar, which it wasn't a free kick. The player didn't even touch him. He dived on the floor waving his arms around. Did it a couple of times in the game, but that is with me with my Leicester glasses on. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. So
yeah,
I'm going to look at it from a neutral point of view.
If I'm being honest, I don't think that he doesn't do that week in, week out like we see some players do. I think it might have been a one-off. I don't know. We have seen it a few times, but I don't think it's in his game inherently, is it?
No, it's not. I think like I say, it was just something that I picked up on. But again, like I say, I'm saying it with my Leicester glasses on, and every team does have those players. So I'm not kind of that deluded that I'll be like, he was kind of he was ruining the game sort of thing. I think every player does, and I think he was getting a little bit annoyed with the Leicester midfield actually, because they did leave a few on him a couple of times as well. So I can understand that from a professional footballer's point of view. But no, Man City were worthy winners. I think Leicester now, I said this on a couple of fan forums, Leicester now have got games to look forward to where I think we can actually get points out of every game till the end of the season. Not saying we will. That's not me saying we will at all, because we've got some very, very tough games. But what I'm saying is when I look at the start of the season from a Leicester perspective, I was looking at Man City, I was looking at Liverpool and go, well, we'll be lucky to get anything out of either of those games. And actually this season we've got 6 points from both teams. In terms of, we beat Liverpool once and we beat Man City once as well. So for Leicester, that's actually a pretty good return playing those teams. So we move on and hopefully get a good result of the weekend, which we'll need.
Yeah. Well, let's hope. It's a very tough ask coming up, because you do have West Ham coming up, don't you? So it'll be a very tough game indeed.
We do, but I think a lot of people forget we've got a lot of talent in the side, and on our day, I think we can beat anybody else that we've got left. We were coming into this Man City game on really good form. The international break actually didn't help Leicester at all. So,
yeah, but if Leicester did lose to West Ham, do you think Leicester will be in a bit of trouble?
Difficult to say. I actually think it's a weird one, because I think if Leicester win on Sunday, I think that's not almost top 3 done, but you put odds on Leicester to finish in top 3 if they win against West Ham. If they lose, it puts a bit of doubt in the back of your mind, but you're still a point ahead of West Ham regardless. So you're still in there to fight. Do you know what I mean? You're still in there to fight. So I want to say it's a massive game and probably the biggest of the season, but I will put this in asterisk. It's not the end of the world if we lose it. It's not the end of the world, because we've still got stuff to fight for. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I know. Think that's the way I'll be looking at it. But if we do win, it's it's bigger reward if we win, of course. You know what I mean? It's a massive reward if we win because we go 7 points above fifth. So, you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, so let's move on to the final game on this Saturday. Arsenal, Liverpool. Now, Liverpool won this 3-0. Do you think that was a fair result?
It's a weird one. I think first half, you know, until the first goal went in the second half, really, there wasn't a lot in the game.
Yeah, I agree
you
with
know,
that.
it was quite a boring game, to be honest. And I thought, you know, and I kept laughing to myself because I think Sky Sports had put like you know, guaranteed goals, and up until like the 60 something, you know, nearly 60th minute, there'd been no goals. So I was laughing because that was the tagline was guaranteed goals. So I thought if it's a 0-0, it'd be hilarious. But of course, Liverpool went on to win 3-0. I think it's just how many times are we going to say this? Arsenal self-implode in terms of mistakes at the back. The back line just isn't good enough, is it? Let's be honest. It's just
No.
not good enough. You know, I know Tierney went off with an injury. He's arguably their best defender, but even he's been good for them this season. He's been very good. But Arsenal, he's not been that good because Arsenal are where they are for a reason. You know, they're mid-table. For Arsenal Football Club, it's not good enough.
No, I agree. And I know we said midway through the season that Arteta needs more time. He will come good, which I think the hopes of that are getting slimmer and slimmer. I just haven't been impressed. Nothing about the performances have made me think, oh, this could be a really good team one day. Do you know what I mean?
You know, you look back at the games they win. You look back at the games they win, and again, I'm going from a Leicester point of view because it's a game I watched. But even the goal they conceded against Leicester, they won 3-1. Brilliant performance, but they still made a mistake for the first goal and just let Tielemans run. That's what I'm saying. The games they win, they always seem to still make a mistake. So if you're sitting there as Arteta and you're going, you know, what have I got to do? I think to be honest, I'd be saying to Arteta, I'd be like, you haven't got the talent in the back line to play out from the back all the time.
Yeah.
You haven't, you know, because you're making so many mistakes. You're not a Man City, you're not a Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? You're not that team that have got the players who can play out from the back. So, you know, I think if I'm talking from an Arsenal perspective, I just think, you know, go long. And as much as it sucks that you're having to go long, but and I know you might have to change a couple of things, you know, maybe win a couple of second balls and stuff. It's the playing out from the back isn't working. It's costing you games. And it's making you suffer in terms of league position. It's just not good enough. You know, what do you think from a Liverpool perspective? A great win, really, wasn't it, in the end?
I think it's a great win. I think if they just reignited, if there was any doubt before that, they are in this top four race again. I think it's going to be really, really interesting come the end of the season because Liverpool are back in the race. I think it's out of 4 teams now, don't you think? I think it's out of Chelsea, Tottenham, Liverpool, and West Ham for the final top 4 spot. Would you agree?
No, I would agree, and you know, I think it's. I'd put Leicester in that conversation as well. I have to just because of what happened last season. You know, I think Leicester have the capacity to drop out of that top 4 for sure. I don't think they will. I think they've got enough talent, but I'd put them to drop out. Could potentially drop out of it as well. And that's just me talking from a kind of pundit perspective, but I think you're right. I think those 4 teams, it's out of those, and I actually at the moment, I'd say for that 4th spot, if you're going to be completely honest, it's between Liverpool and West Ham. I think.
Really, you don't think Chelsea?
No, I don't. I really don't. They've drawn against Leeds. They obviously lost against West Brom. I just think. I think with the inevitability that Liverpool are going to come good in these last sort of, you know, 8 or 9 games, 8 games. I think it's, Liverpool have got the talent. We know that, and I think they've got enough to get themselves. I just fancy Liverpool now, especially after that win. So
Yeah, you have to.
We'll see what happens. I'm not saying Chelsea are out of it by any stretch, and I think Tottenham are still in it, although they had a very bad result, which we'll go on to at the weekend. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, let's actually move on to the Newcastle Tottenham game, because before this game we thought, Tottenham were going to breathe us surely, and it looked like it might have been the case when Tottenham went 2-1 up, Kane double, and you're like, right, Tottenham have now stepped up. It could easily be 4 or 5, but no, Newcastle stepped up, and in the second half, I think Newcastle well deserved the draw in the end. They played some really, really good stuff. What did you think of it? Were you surprised?
Yeah, I wasn't actually. You say they well deserved the draw in the end. They probably were the better team and could have gone on to win it in terms of what they created.
Yeah.
Through the game in its entirety. But I'm going to make a statement now. I think Mourinho's gone at the end of the season. If they don't make top 4, I think he's gone.
You think so?
Yeah, I just don't think he's happy. If you look at his interview, it's the same Mourinho stuff before he gets sacked. He starts to turn on the players a little bit, starts to question their ability. We've seen it before. Mourinho's been around the Premier League for a long time, as we both know, and I just don't think he's happy there again. He's so I wouldn't be surprised if he either walks or he gets sacked. But if they don't make the top 4, and I think Tottenham are in some serious trouble, because I don't think Kane's staying either. We've spoke about this, haven't we?
Yeah, I think Kane needs to go.
Yeah, but I don't think Kane's particularly happy there, to be honest. Now, there's just the way he plays, his mannerisms. I mean, he still scores goals and he still does what he needs to do, because he's an ultimate professional and he's one of the best strikers in the world, let alone the Premier League. But I just don't think he's happy there. And like we've both said this week, obviously in conversation between each other, Kane needs to leave to win trophies. He's not gonna do it at Tottenham. And even if they do somehow win the Carabao Cup against Man City, it's still not enough, is it? It's
kind of like a second-rate trophy. No offense to it, but in reference to the Champions League and like Premier League, which every player wants to win. No boy grows up wants to win the Carabao Cup, do they?
Even takes a backseat, in my opinion, in the domestic competition in terms of the FA Cup. I think the FA Cup's the domestic competition involving all the clubs. I think the Carabao Cup is second rate even to that. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
when don't get me wrong, I'd much rather win a Premier League or a Champions League than an FA Cup. But I think in terms of the domestic cup debate, I think the FA Cup comes out on top. So I just think that I don't think that'll be enough to keep him there. But going back to the game, sorry, I know we started. There's a lot to talk about with Tottenham, which I'm sure we'll delve into over the next couple of weeks. But I just think that it was a poor performance, and again, Harry Kane bailed them out and got them a point pretty much. He scored 2 goals, does what he does. But if I'm Harry Kane, just going on to him again, I'm getting annoyed. I'm annoyed because I've scored 2 goals. For a striker, that's your job done, isn't it? I mean, he won't see it like that. Of course he won't. He's a captain of the club. He's, like I say, he's ultimate professional. But you've scored 2 goals. You've done your bit as the striker. Do you know what I mean? And your defence just isn't good enough. And again, the defence was all over the shop. Let's be honest, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I just wasn't very impressed with that at all. But going to Newcastle then, a really, really good point. And I think it gives them a little bit of breathing space. So now there's a 3-point gap between them and Fulham, given that Fulham lost 3-1 to Villa, which we'll come on to. But Newcastle have a game in hand, and I think for the first time in a while, I think Newcastle actually have a chance, like a real good chance to stay, particularly if they play like they did against Tottenham, don't you think?
I'm a bit hesitant at the moment because I think most Newcastle fans, I've got a couple of friends who are Newcastle fans, and I know you have as well, Will. I think talking to them, it's a sense of, you never know what Newcastle side's going to turn up. Like, you need this Newcastle side that played Tottenham need to be the one that turn up every week. In terms of the attacking intent, I think they had 17 shots throughout the whole game, which is actually the most in Steve Bruce's tenure. There's a stat for you. So it kind of shows you where they're at. But I think I was impressed with them. I was very impressed with them, and I'd back them if they play like that every week. But it depends if you get the Newcastle from Brighton that we see, or you get the one against Tottenham. Do you know what I mean? So, and I still think they've got they'll have a couple of games where they'll drop off the pace. So it just depends on what Newcastle shows up for me. It's the same with every team, but I think Newcastle specifically, because there was a period after Christmas where I thought, no, Newcastle will be all right, because they actually played some really good, again, attacking intent and stuff like that. They were breaking through the lines, and you thought, yes, okay, they're gonna get out. It's just before Wilson got injured, and they kind of slumped off again. So I'm not so sure at the moment, if I'm going to be honest with you, with Newcastle. Yeah. We'll see which way it goes.
Only time will tell. So let's move on. I know we're going on a little bit, but let's move into Southampton Burnley. Now, what a game this was. Some absolute screamers of goals. Honestly, unbelievable. Ended up being 3-2 Southampton. What did you make of that one then, Jay?
It was arguably the game of the weekend behind Chelsea West Brom. I think this game didn't have this one marked down, did we, as kind of a thriller. But in terms of the attacking football and some of the goals that were scored, especially with Burnley going 2-0 up, you think, especially with Southampton's kind of form, you're sitting there going, well, I'm not so sure about this one. But they came back. And they did absolutely tremendously well. Obviously, Redmond got the third goal, and I love watching it, to be honest. Couldn't take my eyes off the game, and I'm pretty sure you were the same. I think we were both watching at the same time, weren't we, Will?
Yeah, and you have to feel for Pope because he made some absolutely unbelievable saves. I mean, again, he's in one. He has to be at least in the squad for the Euros, not the starting 11, but he has to be in the squad.
Yeah. I think actually, obviously, I've put Pope in my England 11. I think I might want to change that now, considering his distribution doesn't seem to be the best.
Yeah.
But he's definitely, in terms of shot stoppers, he's one of the best in the league. So he's a very good goalkeeper, and he made some stronger saves. I think Forster made some good saves at the other end as well. Let's not forget last sort of 10-15 minutes when Burnley were pushing for that equaliser. He made some great saves. I think two from Chris Wood, one from, he tried to bend it round him, made a great diving save to his right hand side, and then again point blank range, which is something I wanted to go on to. Defender was pulling Wood's shirt as Wood went for the header. I don't know whether you remember seeing that incident, Will. Do you think it was a penalty? Because even though he got the shot away, he was still pulling his shirt in the box quite vigorously.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, no, because like you say, he did get a shot away, but he was impeded. I think if he'd went down, it would have been a penalty, but because he tried to stay up, take the shot on, then it's one of those.
Well, it was a header, wasn't it? So it was a header, wasn't it? So he was already diving for the ball, got his shot away, and I think it was a penalty, But again, those don't get given if the shot gets away usually. Which is a bit of a weird one, really.
Yeah, and we saw somewhat of a similar incident in a Man U game against Brighton, which we'll come on to shortly, won't we?
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, what a game. And what a comeback from Southampton. And you think with that, Southampton are safe? I know we said it before, but
36 points this season is going to be enough. 100%. Yeah. They're already safe for me. They could easily lose. They could lose all their games now. I think they're safe.
That's fair. So yeah, let's move on to the Villa Fulham match, and this was 3-1 Villa. Now, I think we were praising Fulham the last few games, but since then, they just haven't looked impressive, have they? I think they're in some serious danger now, particularly with Newcastle coming in a bit of form. So, what did you think of it, Joe?
Look, I mean, at this stage of the season, it changes every week. Odds are we'll probably be praising Fulham next week and slagging off Newcastle, vice versa. So it does change every week, especially at the bottom. They've still got a lot to fight for. I just wasn't impressed with how they capitulated. They were 1-0 up, not in cruise control, but very, comfortable. And of course, they made a couple of substitutions. Trezeguet came on and really just changed the game. Scored twice, and I just feel with Fulham, are they going to have enough? Do you know what I mean? I like them, and I like Scott Parker, but you can like a team and them still not be very good, which is kind of the consensus at the moment. I think. I do worry for Fulham. I think it's going to be between, if I'm going to be completely honest, like I've already said, I think West Brom are out of it. I think they've got a little bit too much to do. I think it is going to be between Newcastle and Fulham, who gets relegated for that last spot. So it's going to be interesting, but they've got to bounce back from it because it was a poor performance. It was a poor last sort of 25 minutes, and I've always said, if you want to have your best section of the game, you want it to be in the last 20 minutes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can play poorly for 70 minutes, and if you have a great last 20 minutes, it's often where
you can win the game.
Yeah, it's often where the game's won and lost.
And that was the case, wasn't it? I think
it really was. It really was. So, I mean, what do you think about Fulham? Do you think they're? I mean, you've already said that they're in trouble. We all know they're in trouble. They've been in trouble since the start of the season, but do you think they've got enough to get out of it?
I think they do, but they need to pull the finger out, don't they? I think Newcastle have a game in hand, so do Brighton, so it'll be a real tough ask. And with West Brom coming into a bit of form, if they can pick it up, I think it's going to be really tight come the end of the season, isn't it? I think it's going to be very interesting. A lot closer than we originally thought, don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. I've not been, to be honest, and I'm going to be completely, be a bit harsh towards the bottom three teams. I think this has actually been quite a poor season for teams down at the bottom. I don't think they've there have been better teams that have got relegated before. I think of teams like Blackpool, for example.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my head as well.
Yeah.
Blackpool were unbelievable that season.
Yeah, and they got relegated with 39 points. So you look at some of the teams in the past. I've not been blown away. So it's been quite poor at the bottom. I'm talking at the bottom. I mean, we talk about Fulham, playing better and stuff, but let's be honest, they've not been amazing this season. Neither have Newcastle. Brighton shouldn't be down there, in my opinion. They shouldn't be. With the football they've played, but you look at the teams in and around them. Burnley could be in trouble. Southampton haven't been great. So, do you know what I mean? The quality's not been there for me at the bottom of the league for sure. I mean, I know that sounds like a bit of a kind of a hypocritical answer or question to say the teams at the bottom of the league have been fairly poor. Of course they have, but I'm just talking about in terms of the quality that we've seen at the bottom of the league in seasons past. Yeah, it's not been quite up there with what we have seen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and speaking of Brighton, let's move on to Man U 2, Brighton 1. Now, Brighton actually took the lead in this match, and I think Brighton would feel a bit hard done by about not to come away with at least a point. But Man U just stepped up in the last 20 minutes or so, didn't they? What did you think of it, Joe?
That's the difference. You talk about, your teams fighting at the bottom of the league, and you talk about your teams at the top of the league. As much as I'm not a massive Man United fan, but they've got the quality, haven't they? And the thing is with the United is they're always in a game, and they did enough. It was the screw was starting to turn, wasn't it? Slowly in the second half, and you could kind of feel it coming, almost.
Yeah, you just know Man U can just put it up a gear and.
Yeah. I mean, Brighton did very well. Don't get me wrong. They have a very good side. They have a very good system of playing, as we know. And obviously they got the goal. Welbeck got a goal, which I'm sure he'll be delighted with. Perhaps not so much now that they lost. But I just think United were favourites going into this one, of course, and that showed in the end. It wasn't the greatest performance, but look, the teams at the top of the league tend to do what they need to do to get the wins. I mean, you look at, for example, Leicester against Brighton about a month ago. Leicester won 2-1 in the end. They didn't play very well. Same with United. It was a similar performance in that respect. But they got the win. And that's what the teams at the top of the league, and that's why they are closer to the top of the league than the bottom, because they do what they can to get the wins. And that's what United did.
For sure. But do you think that Brighton should have been... do you think they were lucky not to get a penalty with a challenge on Welbeck?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, every decision's contentious now, isn't it? I mean, we talked about, different decisions and stuff. I think they were unlucky, but I've seen them given, I've seen them not given. So it's kind of where you want to be on the fence. I think if the referee gives it, you're going, I can see why he's giving it, but if he doesn't give it, you can say, well, I can see why he's not giving it.
Yeah, I think the main catalyst is this clear and obvious one, because Mike Dean didn't give it initially. It was harder to overturn as a result, and I think that's the real talking point there, isn't it?
And that's the reason, isn't it? That's why they operate with VAR. If it's given by the referee initially, it's harder to overturn. If it's not given by the referee initially, it's harder to overturn. Do you know what I mean? So it still lies down with what the referee gives initially a lot of the time, which is the talking point, like you just said.
Yeah, 100%. So let's move on to our final game, which was Everton Crystal Palace. Now, this ended at 1-1, but Everton, really, they've kind of capitulated the last few games, haven't they? I don't know if it's because of injuries or not, but they should have won this game. What did you think of it, Joe?
Well, they should have won the game. There's no doubt in. But again, 1-0 was never safe, as it was proven. I think Crystal Palace scored in the 86th minute, didn't they? So again, it's points dropped. I think if I'm going to be completely honest now, Everton, for me, in terms of the form that they're exhibiting, they're out of the race for top four. I know they're not. I know points wise, they're not a million miles off. So you never really want to write a team off this early going into this kind of final stretch of games. But I just can't see them picking it up enough. You've got to beat Crystal Palace. You've got to beat those teams.
You have to beat those kind of teams.
If you're gonna get into top four, you have to beat those teams. And Crystal Palace aren't a bad side. I'm not saying that they didn't, that they're not going to put up a fight. Of course they are. It's not a massively shock result, but it's just, if you're going to get into top four, you've got to win those games, and they didn't, and it's points dropped. And again, I'll look at Chelsea, I look at Everton, I look at Tottenham. They had a real opportunity, especially with obviously Leicester dropping points as well. The only team that took advantage of that was West Ham. And I just think sometimes, is it the psychology of it, do you think? Do you know what I mean? Is it the psychology of the fact that they know that these teams, a lot of these teams would have played after they'd seen Chelsea drop points, after they'd seen Leicester drop points. So you're sitting there and you're going, right, okay, well, we need to win this game. And does that put a little bit of psychology on it? Do you know what I mean?
I think it does, because you'd always say you'd rather have the points than the games in hand, wouldn't you? Because the points are already there. The games in hand, you have that element of that. We've seen teams capitulate over the years, haven't they? With they just need a point from the last 3 games. I know it's a random example, but for example, Mansfield Town a few seasons ago, they were showing to get automatics. All they needed is a point from the last 2 games, and they ended up losing 2 of them because
last 3 games, mate. That was painful. Obviously, I live in Mansfield, so I follow them quite religiously as well. Last 3 games needed a point and actually didn't come anywhere near getting that point.
And it just shows, going back to it, the psychology behind it, doesn't it? And it can happen, and it does happen very frequently. So
Well,
it'll be interesting to see what happens.
It's the business end of the season, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's where you've got to be physically fit, but you've also got to be mentally fit in the sense of getting it right. You know?
Yeah, it's that fight or flight mentality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all the games gone through. Now, I know we've run a little over, so I'm going to use some quick fire predictions for the upcoming game. So I'm going to say all of them, briefly say why, and then you can go through your predictions afterwards. Is that all right, Joe?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so first we have Fulham Wolves. Now, I'm going 1-1 because I haven't been impressed with Wolves, and Fulham, I think, will want to come out fighting. Moving on to Man City Leeds, I'm gone 3-0 Man City. I think Leeds might be open at the back, causing more problems, but you never know with Leeds. Moving on to Liverpool Villa, I'm going to go 3-0 Liverpool because Liverpool have a bit of swig and they'll want to get revenge for what happened early on in the season. Moving on to Crystal Palace Chelsea, I'm going to go 3-1 Chelsea. I just think Chelsea have a bit more about them, and I think they'll want to be fighting for the top four. Moving on to Burnley Newcastle, I'm going to go 1-1 because they'll both be fighting. Burnley are basically safe, but Burnley are a very, very hard team to break down. Apart from last week where they conceded 3, but you know what Sean Dyche is like. He'll make sure it comes back to
Of course.
be a bit more defensively sound. West Ham Leicester, you're not going to like this, but they'll both be fighting, and I think I'm going to go for 2-1 West Ham, I know you're going to hate this, but you just would want to back them at the moment. I think they come in with a bit more form. I know Leeds are Leicester are a bit higher up in the table, but I think there'll be a bit of an upset on the cards there. Moving on to Tottenham Man U. I think it will be quite a high-scoring affair. I'm going to go 2-2. Kane double. Fernandes will obviously score his penalty as always, so I'm going to go 2-2. Sheffield United Arsenal. Well, I know Arsenal have been in the best form, but I've gone 3-0 Arsenal just because Sheffield United. Sorry, Sheffield United fans. West Brom Southampton. I've gone 2-1 West Brom. I think if they showed the fight like they did against Chelsea, I think they should have a real good chance against Southampton. Brighton, Everton, I'm going to go 1-1 because they're both fighting, but they've both stumbled at late, so I'm going to go 1-1 and breathe. What do you think of that, Joe?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, apart from obviously one result I massively don't agree with, but of course I'm not going to. Right, I'm going to go through mine now then.
Okay, I'll write them down as I go.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go Fulham, Wolves. I'm gonna go for Wolves 2-1 here. I think Fulham are on a bit of a decline in terms of form and stuff. So I think Wolves will win this one, even though they're not in the best form themselves. Leeds Man City, that's going to be a very open game. I mean, Leeds could quite easily score. You know what? I'm going to go for 5-2 Man City.
Oh, big score game.
A big score, but it's because I think Leeds will score a couple of goals. And Man City obviously will do the same. Liverpool, Aston Villa, it's a tough game, but I think Liverpool have too much for them. I'm going to go 3-1 Liverpool, especially getting the revenge for the 7-2 defeat that they suffered at the hands of Villa early on in the season. Crystal Palace, Chelsea. It's a difficult one, London derby. I'm gonna go for 2-0 Chelsea. I think Chelsea will want to bounce back. Obviously, they've had the midweek game as well, though, so depends how they react after that. Burnley, Newcastle on the Sunday. I'm gonna go for a 1-1 here. I think it's gonna be a draw. Both teams are kind of obviously at the bottom of the table, so it's going to be a very bitty affair in my opinion. It might be between kind of who shows the most class. West Ham Leicester, right? I could quite easily see this going either way for both teams. I don't actually begrudge you saying 2-1 to West Ham. But of course, I'm a Leicester fan, and I think Leicester will want to play better, obviously, than they did last weekend. But I think Leicester have got a better side overall as well. I will say that. So I think it will be 2-1 to Leicester, especially with the form away from home this season. They've only lost to Liverpool away from home, not lost to anybody else. So that's an interesting stat for you there, Will. Tottenham, Man United. Now, I think this could be a draw. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think
both teams, same as me.
Yeah, both teams are very similar. I think it's going to be interesting. Arsenal, well, Sheffield United, Arsenal, can't see anything else but an Arsenal win. I don't think it's going to be an enthralling game. I think Arsenal will win 2-0. Don't think it's going to be exciting, but I can't see anything else but an Arsenal win, even though they're not in the greatest of form. Monday night, West Brom, Southampton. Now, I'd like to see West Brom win this one. Can't see it though. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw here as well. I think they'll get a point at both teams. And final game, Brighton, Everton. I'm going to go for a Brighton 2-1 win.
Or some big results there. And like we say, these are just our opinions. So if anyone has any disagrees, please drop them in the comments below and we'll have a bit of a discussion around it. So very, very quickly then, Joe, what do you think? Who do you think were the two standout players for this week? So who have your two?
It's got to be Pereira for West Brom. I think
I agree with that.
He played stonker for them, so he's got to get a mention. He's definitely their standout man. You know, if you look at the talent in their team, he's definitely the most talented in their side in terms of can unlock defences for them and stuff. And he did that against Chelsea. Scored some very, very nice goals. And then I mean I mention him a lot, but I think he's got to be an assist and a goal. He's got to be mentioned again. It's got to be Lingard, hasn't it?
Do you know what, Joe? Those are the two players who I picked as well. So we're on the same wavelength there.
Yeah. Well, I mean they've got to be the two mentioned. It wasn't difficult this week to pick your players, really, was it? Because they were standout performances across the board. So those are my two players of the week for sure.
Wow, very, very interesting games coming up as well. Let's hope those two players on form. Apart from for you, let's hope Lingard doesn't play well for you, Joe.
Let's hope not. I think indeed he will have you in the back pocket hopefully for this game. I'm hoping.
Right. Thank you very much, and I can't wait for next week. Make sure you follow us on Facebook right from the kickoff, Instagram, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube. As always, next week we'll be joined by Peter Crouch. So you're looking forward to that, then, Joe?
Yeah, can't wait, mate. Looking forward to having Peter Crouch on. Always, great guy, very tall, very hard to talk to. Obviously, can barely hear me, but yeah, great to have him on.
Well, thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.
All right, see you next time.